The assassination of Charlie Kirk occurred now almost a month ago, and interesting storylines continue to emerge related to that event. For example, on September the 8th, 2 days before the assassination, Jezebel magazine published an article with the headline, "We paid some Etsy witches to curse Charlie Kirk." Let's talk about the presence of evil in our generation. We paid some Etsy witches to curse Charlie Kirk. An actual headline from a publication called Jezebel. Jezebel is a liberal magazine for women that brags about its progressive support for feminism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as unfettered sexual expression. The name says it all. Jezebel, the most horrendous female in the entire Old Testament. The article was written by a writer by the name of Claire Goonan. She wrote a story about purchasing hexes to apply against Charlie Kirk on Etsy. Now, who knew that there were witches selling spells and curses on Etsy? Well, if you're a regular viewer of Truth Currents, then you knew that because I spoke about this topic just a few weeks ago. As it turns out, the online shop that is usually associated with crafts and homemade goods has expanded rapidly in this area of spells and hexes and occult paraphernalia. In fact, Goonan said that she did a search for "curse your enemy" and came up with 5,000 results. On the day of Charlie Kirk's murder, it's interesting that the publication Jezebel added an editorial note concerning the shooting. They said that they condemned the shooting, but since that day, the article has been replaced by an editor's note clearly written by the organization's lawyers to sort of disavow that they had any ill intent. Although if you read the article, which I went back and read, it's pretty ugly about the things that they wished would happen to Charlie Kirk. For the lawyers to now come along and say, well, it wasn't serious, it was satire. I mean, that's like me looking at you and going, you're a fat, stupid slob, but I'm just kidding. It's disingenuous. The presence of evil is the desire to destroy, to hurt those who are outside of my circle. Modern readers hear the word magic and we think about sleight of hand or optical illusions, but the Bible takes this whole business very seriously. In fact, the biblical authors and the biblical audience understood that demonic powers actually operate behind the so-called magical arts. Deuteronomy 32 says that those who practice this kind of idolatry offer their sacrifices to demons. That's a quote from verse 17. The Apostle Paul in the New Testament writes that pagans sacrifice to demons and not to God. That's in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. The Old Testament calls magicians an abomination to the Lord, Deuteronomy 18, and it subjects them to capital punishment. That's right. The magic arts, the dark arts of the occult were a punishable capital offense, punishable by death in the Old Testament. That's Exodus chapter 22. When Claire Goonan solicited Etsy witches to curse Charlie Kirk, she trafficked in demons. Well, the New Testament is not silent about this. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12 tells us that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. When Judas betrayed Jesus, the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of John both tell us that he did that as a co-conspirator with Satan. John chapter 8 tells us that when Jesus was speaking to the religious leaders who opposed him, He said, "You seek to kill me because my word finds no place in you. You cannot bear my word. You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires." He was a murderer from the beginning. In other words, we don't live in a morally neutral universe. The cosmos is not arbitrarily neutral with just a hint of good or a hint of evil here or there. There is in the entire created order the presence of the things that honor God and the presence of those things that are in rebellion against God. It was satanic hate that nailed Jesus to the cross, and it was satanic hate that put a bullet through Charlie Kirk's neck. His murder should be a wake-up call for all Christians. We are in a cosmic war, and that war centers on ideas related to truth and lies. If we are faithful to the truth of God's Word, the powers of darkness will hate us just like they hated Jesus. That's in John chapter 15. The reality is, the murder of Charlie Kirk was a heavy blow to me because as I sat and pondered, I came to the undeniable conclusion that there are people who not only wanted him dead, but they have laughed and danced and celebrated that death. These are people happy about the murder of a man whose belief system was just like mine. Jesus said that if we follow him, we would be hated just as he was hated. So many pastors and so many churches have decided to throw in the towel and to go along to get along, to say or do whatever is necessary, specifically so that we won't be hated. We're told that we needed to be winsome. We needed to be gentle. We needed to be inclusive. We needed to accept everybody as they are. But here's what you're not being told. The evil in this world is motivated by a spiritual enemy who hates God, and he hates everything related to God, particularly those beings created in the image of God. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how soft or how gentle you are. Now, I want us to be winsome. I don't want us to be hateful. I don't want us to be ugly. But winsomeness is not a shield against the persecution of evil. I mean, for all of the outrageous claims about Charlie Kirk being a bigot and a hater, the fact of the matter is, if you go watch his videos, this guy was winsome. He was open for debate. He went on to college campuses all across America and sat at a table with an open microphone and invited anybody of any political or ideological persuasion to step to the microphone and debate him. His statement was, "Prove me wrong." It wasn't a taunt. It was an invitation. Come talk to me and tell me what you believe. Convince me that you have a handle on truth, or listen to me and be convinced that I have a handle on truth. It's an old-fashioned concept that people who disagree ought to be able to sit down and talk about things. That is, until an assassin's bullet ended the conversation. Well, whatever evil force was behind that act, it's completely backfired. There are articles all across the media today about the expansion of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's organization, onto college campuses. They've now had more than 120,000 inquiries about starting new chapters on college campuses and high school campuses. People who have abandoned the faith, deconstructed, left the church at some point in their life, they are finding their way back to church. all over social media, you see people showing their new Bible that they just went out and purchased, that they've started to read. Because even if they're not confident that they know who God is, they are confident about one thing. They are shocked by the blatant reality of evil that is playing out right before their eyes. There was a lone gunman, apparently, motivated by Satan, clearly, who thought that he could perform an act and cut off the dialogue. Just like the blood of the martyrs has always been the seed of the church, the murder of Charlie Kirk has completely backfired for the left because people are binge watching his videos. They are making their way to church with real questions. Even our church is seeing people come in saying, I'm not sure what to think right now, but I need truth. Will you tell it to me? Well, let's talk about truth. One of the things about Charlie Kirk was he trusted truth to win. His campus events overflowed with students who were hungry for someone who would defend reality with clarity and conviction. He was confident without being cruel. He was bold without being brash. And this was persuasive to a large and ever-growing portion of students and young adults. That's why the left hated him so. They hated him not because he was ugly or mean-spirited. They hated him. They celebrated his death because his approach was effective. It was drawing young people to conversations about what's true, what's ethical, what's right in the world, and what's wrong. For the radicals of this generation, their message is simple. The assassination was meant to say that if you oppose the agenda that we are putting forth, it will come at the risk of your violent elimination. Now, in this moment, conservatives and Christians in particular have some options about how to respond. We can be terrorized and go silent. There will be some who probably do that. Typically pastors who have never had much backbone. They will move further into the shadows. They will be mousy and scared to speak truth. They will speak in religious platitudes, and they will offer non-threatening devotional encouragements. And their churches will die, and they will go away, and the faith will not be impacted one bit by their absence. We cannot be terrorized into silence. There's another option. We can be radicalized to return the violence. The left hopes that violence will silence dissent. I am disturbed when I see a Christian here or there who purports to be a follower of Jesus Christ saying that we should meet fire with fire, that it's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. We should respond the same way. Frankly, the leftists win if Christianity sacrifices its soul and becomes a kinder version of the left's behavior. The second option to promote violence against our opponents is a subtle but dangerous temptation. And if we let rage and anger consume us, we may gain political victory, but it will happen at the cost of our souls. Kirk was a winsome fellow. He was engaging. He was polite. The lesson here is that his murder is evidence that winsomeness or politeness is no shield from persecution. So if there is no shield from persecution, instead of going silent or becoming like those that hate us, there has to be a third option. That option is that we follow his example. We persuade. We win people over the same way that he won thousands of people over by his style. It's said that he contributed to what the media has called the vibe shift. Some commentators argue that the re-election of Donald Trump is directly related to the efforts of Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. Because what happened is he went on hundreds of college campuses over a span of months and years. And while college campuses still overwhelmingly vote liberal, the margin of liberal to conservative voting in the last election was the narrowest difference in more than a generation. Charlie Kirk may be single-handedly responsible for that ideological shift among young voters. His model is for us to consider an approach where we witness to truth and we do it in a way that maintains our composure, refusing to respond in kind to those who curse, who threaten, who hate us. We just keep speaking truth. But here's the thing. We'll never be able to be witnesses to the truth and fully evade the possibility of martyrdom. It is inherent in the commitment to Christ that we made when, to use Jesus' words, we denied ourselves, we took up our cross, and we followed Him. We need to resist evil, but we do that without becoming evil. Now is the season that we need to grieve. We need to pray for justice. It's time to demand accountability from those who normalize hostility. There's been a lot of complaints about cancel culture as Jimmy Kimmel and dozens of college professors and other people have lost their jobs because of their outrageously ungodly responses on social media as they sort of dance on Charlie Kirk's grave. I think that's just called accountability. Speech in this country is free. It's free to say what you want to say. But free speech does not mean free of consequence. And the price to be paid for some of the things that are being said is you're no longer allowed to work among civilized people because you have displayed yourself to be a horrible human and to lose your job, to be ostracized because of your behavior. That is just the natural consequence of your own actions. We need to not discard Charlie Kirk's strategy, but we need to hold to it because that's the strategy that is most dangerous to the left. A strategy of confident truth-telling. His way was working. That's why those opposed to reality are celebrating his death. They hated the fact that the lies of the left, from LGBTQ agendas to transgender ideology to the most bizarre things that are attempting to be normalized in our culture, men like Charlie Kirk called them out. The emperor of left wokeism has no clothes. We don't hide in our churches behind closed doors. We speak truth with confidence. And God help us if we don't see some pulpits come back to life with pastors who grow a backbone and open the Word of God and proclaim that good is good and evil is evil, and there is no mix between the two. One of the reasons why the legacy that Charlie Kirk leaves must continue is because he had discovered something. He had discovered what the church has known intuitively over the last 2,000 years. And that is, while we may put ourselves literally in the line of fire from those who hate truth, how will they hear unless somebody tells them? It's time for the church, as I've said many times before, It's time for the church to be the church. It's time for somebody to tell this generation the truth. It's what they're looking for. It's what they're hungry for. It's what they're starving for. Pastors, will you step up to the responsibility that you have been given as a teacher of the flock of God? And church members, will you come out of your meek, mild, don't want to offend anybody attitude and start to have conversations in your workplace and among your neighbors about what's right and what's wrong? The fate of this country and this generation rests with those of us who know the truth. Will we be truth tellers? That's the only question left to be answered. The enemy hates us, but he hates us already. So why not engage him on the field of battle, in the marketplace of ideas, and follow Jesus the way he called us to deny ourselves and our comfort, to take up our cross, a willingness to die, and follow him. Charlie Kirk was a man of God, a man of faith. His wife and his children face tough days ahead, and they are in our prayers. But we will not let the martyrdom of a good man drive us into the shadows. May God help us if we fail to be truth tellers in our day. This is Truth Currents.